This lesson is going to be looking at two different ways to calculate the value for slope. Remember, slope is the slant or the steepness of a line. So we say that is the change in rise over the change in run. If you look at the graph, if I were to draw a grid here, remember this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. So we can also say slope is change in rise over change in run, or change in y, because the y-axis is what rises, because rise means to go up or down, and change in run then is the change in x, because when you run horizontally. So it's a change in y over the change in x. You can also see it written as the triangle y over triangle x, and the triangle, the way you pronounce that in math, it's the Greek letter delta, which means the change in. So again, it means a change in x, or a change in y over the change in x. There are 4 different types of slope. The way I read lines is just like the way you read on a paper, the English language. You read from the left-hand side of the paper to the right-hand side of the paper. So the first example you have there is positive. Positive slope means the line goes up from left to right. The negative slope means the line goes down from left to right. And then there are 2 special slopes. The first special one is 0. It's a horizontal line, meaning the line runs, but it never ever rises. And then the vertical lines mean they have no slope. And sometimes you will also see the word undefined used in place of no slope, which means exactly the same thing. One way to find the slope, if you're given a graph on the grid, you can draw a right triangle. My recommendation, as you can see from the picture, is by starting from the point that's the highest, which is the 3, 4, and drawing a line going straight down. Your line goes straight down just until it gets to the point where it can connect horizontally to the other point. So now my line is here, I can connect horizontally to my other point like that. So then I can count how many lines my graph went up and how many lines it went over. So if I'm looking at how many lines it went up 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So my line went up 4 lines, so my change in rise or my change in y is 4. If we're looking at how far it went over 1, 2. So the line went over 2 spaces, so my change in run or my change in x is 2. So my slope is 4 over 2, which simplifies to 2. The only thing you have to be careful with on the graph, if you're drawing a triangle, is 2 things. One, that each line in your graph is 1, meaning your graph is counting by 1. 1, 2, 3, not 10, 20, 30, etc. And the other thing is you have to look at the direction of your line. If you look at the direction of the line is going up from left to right, so that slope would be positive. So my slope would be positive 2. You can also calculate the slope using a formula, and it's still slope equals m. Why they call it m, I don't know, but you will be referencing the letter m and the value for slope in upcoming things that we're doing in class, but it's still the change in y over the change in x. And to find the change, or how much something changes, you take the 2 values and you subtract. So it's y2 over y1, or minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, the little 2's and the little 1's, the subscripts, those are just a way of identifying the values in each ordered pair and keeping them together. Because as you recall, when you subtract, the order you subtract numbers in makes a difference to their final value. So let's take a look at an example using the slope formula. So if we're looking at this, we have 2 points. Point 1 is 1, 0, and point 2 is 3, 4. The first thing I want to do is I want to label my points. So I want to label my points with x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I'm looking at both of these first values in an ordered pair being the x, because remember, ordered pairs are x, then y. But you can't have 2 values of x because you don't know where to put them in the formula. So you need to give them the subscripts. So I'm going to say the first one is x1 and the second one is x2. Now, the 0 and the 4 are the y values, but you need to put them with their corresponding subscripts. So if the 1 is x1, the 0, because it's in the same ordered pair, has to be y1. If the 3 is x2, the 4 then has to be y2. It does not matter which ones you make x1 and x2, as long as the y values that go with them have the same subscript. So once you label your points, the next thing is you need to write your formula, which I already have written. The third step is to substitute into your formula. So from the labels, we can look at what we're substituting. So y2 minus y1. y2 we labeled as 4, minus y1, which we labeled as 0. Then we can substitute our x values. I have x2, which we labeled as 3, minus x1, which we labeled as 1. So now I can go ahead and I can do the subtraction. So 4 minus 0 is 4, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So if we simplify 4 over 2 again, we get the same answer we had on the first page, which is positive 2.